What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 147 of the Ridgehunteroutdoors podcast. Got a good guest for you this week. I've been excited about doing this one for a while. We've been planning on it since before deer season, but with both of our schedules getting busy throughout season, it took us a while to get it nailed down, but we finally did. Finally got to talk to Nelson Grant from Montana. He is actually a sheriff's deputy out there. He's been on a SWAT team in the past, a narcotics task force. We got to talk about all of that stuff, kind of his career path, where he came from, too. He actually is from Maine originally, where he grew up hunting whitetails. So we got to talk a little bit about his experience with that, and it differs greatly from what we're used to out here in the Midwest, that's for sure. So that was interesting, and then kind of his learning curve going out west and starting to hunt big game out there in Montana, like elk. Of course, we got to talk a lot about elk hunting, the allure of it, some of the challenges that you might be faced with going out there, and just kind of the whole experience in general. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation with Nelson. Super cool dude. I know I enjoyed it, so let's get into it on episode 147. This is the Ridge Hunter Outdoors podcast. Let's start with that then. Let's go all the way back to, if I remember right, because I've listened to you on a few episodes of Cleared Hot. You came from the East Coast, correct?
Yeah, I sure did. I grew up in central Maine, near Bangor, a little town called Dover Foxcroft. Mm-hmm. And that's where I cut my teeth hunting. It's kind of culture up there, and whitetail. There's bear, moose, of course, birds and things like that. Turkeys started coming around as I was in college and in my career after college. But yeah, my main target was whitetail growing up, and it was just kind of tagging along with my dad, my uncles, my grandfather. Mm-hmm. And pretty typical for the East Coast, or at least for that central Maine area where I grew up. It's a generational hunting camp thing.
Right.
So yeah, my grandfather was super passionate. Nelson London was his name. And he was super passionate for hunting. And of course you can imagine the type of, like, if it's brown, it's down, the mm-hmm. culture and the type of environment that went on back then. But it's kind of funny because coming full circle, I talk about this a lot, like in the West here where we'll end up, but there's not a lot of hunting camps. There sure are some, but most of what you see is like wall tents and they're temporary camps. Mm-hmm. And there's good and bad, but the main takeaway I have is that, growing up where my grandfather built this camp, and then my uncles and my dad took over the lease, and at least by lease I don't mean like southern United States where you lease property to hunt the land there. They built this cabin probably illegally, and then the wood company or whoever owned the property found it and then allowed them to keep it going for a small amount of money a year, which by the time I left, I think was like $1,200 a year, and that was divided amongst like 7 of my uncles and myself at that point.
Right.
Maybe a few less, but anyway, the thing is when my grandfather built it, there was like, fields around, and the whitetail hunting was great. But by the time I came along, it had grown up and it was really thick. Mm-hmm. So there were shooting lanes and, tree stand hunting, and the whitetail hunting had kind of decreased in that area. And I honestly never shot a whitetail out of that hunting camp. And really? I don't remember a lot of people shooting whitetails there either.
Right.
So then fast forwarding to the West, where you can kind of target where you want to go. Like if a drainage isn't holding elk or producing numbers for deer, you can, pick a different spot, which is really handy. But anyway, going back to it, yeah, that's where I grew up. It was awesome. I didn't really know what I had, at the time, because it was just culture. I remember smelling Hoppy's number 9 everywhere. And, come November, that's what everybody was doing, was going back to the hunting camp. And, and it was just mostly awesome memories.
Right.
Another cool thing that I remember in my old age here, I'm 42. When I was a kid, there was a CB radio on the wall. And so every night at like I don't know, let's say 7 p.m., all of my aunts in their respective homes would turn on the CB, and all of us guys would hang out around the CB, and we all had call signs.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was Jigger, and for ice fishing. And my dad was a plumber, and so he was pipe wrench, and so on,
Right.
But it was really cool because all the other hunting camps in our area, we all knew them, and everybody could listen to your conversation. And at the time it was with my mom, like, hey, no deer today, Mom, but it was really fun. And so everybody's chiming in from other camps and kind of ribbing you, and everybody had their own times. Yep. And it was really fun. It was a cool culture. And now back there you have cell phones and so it's just changed a lot,
Definitely a different time. But that's one cool thing I think just about hunting in general is even like not being successful. You can have those memories and like you have those experiences that you look back on fondly, even though, like you said, you didn't even ever kill anything. Like it's just there's so much of it about the community and being with a group of guys or whatever and getting out there and having that experience. And we talked about that a lot with different people about how just it's all about what your goals are, like what you're what your expectations are and how you're going to look at maybe a particular season or whatever. But if your goal is to get out there and have a good time and like, especially with the camp scenario, like you're going to have a successful season one way or the other, if that's what you're out there to do. And I think a lot of us are like, it's just as much about that and the stories as it is putting something on the wall and then putting meat in the freezer a lot of times,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's two types of hunters, I think. And it's even more so now with the like the popularity around it and the kind of in your face with social media. But there's the, experience hunters. They're doing it for the experience. And then there's the results hunters. And I would say I'm a little of both. I definitely want a result, mostly for feeding my family, but I am much more the guy that's I would love to shoot at the last day, the last hour of every season. So I have all those days leading up to it.
For sure. Yeah. I would be lying if I said I didn't want to kill a 200-inch deer, but at the same time, like it's just the whole encompassing thing of the hunt, or like for us, whitetail hunting, the whole season kind of wrapped together, and just the hunts you have throughout the season and getting to do it with your buddies or whatever. That's a huge part of it. And most of us are fortunate enough too that you don't have to do it to, like, you don't even have to kill something to put meat in the freezer, right? Like even if you are completely unsuccessful, you can go to the store and buy meat. Now, is it going to be as good as maybe that what you want to do? Maybe not, but you get what I'm saying. Like but I think you're right. The social media has driven a lot of that, where there's a lot of people. I don't know if there's a lot of people, but it seems like there's a lot of people that are out there doing it just so they can kill something and post a picture. And like that doesn't do it for me. It's like I don't even gun hunt deer where we're at because it's just not how I want to kill them. Like I would way rather. I'd rather go all season without killing something, trying to do it with my bow under the circumstances that I want to do it, than go out there on the first day of shotgun season and have someone do a deer drive and push one to me. And I don't have anything against that. It's just not what I want to do. Right. So but I do think there are a lot of people who just do it, and they will do it however they can just so they could put a picture on social media and make everybody else think they're some great white hunter. And to me, that's, I don't know, that says more about the person, I think, than it does the hunting in general.
And I think it comes with hunting maturity too. Like I've heard this, and it's embarrassing to have even been around this conversation, but a friend of mine shot a bull and wounded it, ended up recovering it several days later, and the meat was spoiled. But it was a monster bull. And another buddy of mine had, on his last day, was like, well, if I shoot a cow today, I'll give you the meat if you give me the horns. And it's like, that is a very prime example of the wrong, the goal, your wrong goal.
Right.
Now, and I think that just comes with hunting maturity. I mean, I think the guy that made that comment had never harvested a bull or even hunted them very often. Because I've shot a lot of elk in my time now. And yeah, I just have a different perspective. And again, just like you said, I'm not here to bash anyone or anything. I just want to be a good example, you know, and I have goals for myself and my family. And,
for sure.
Those might be different than somebody else's, but yeah, I've had a lot of opportunity too over the years, and just living here in Montana. If I didn't mention that, now I live in Northwest Montana, kind of by Glacier Park,
Okay.
north of Kalispell, and man, we have a lot of seasons. We have, I think you could hunt for 9 months of our 12-month calendar.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I do hunt a lot, but I don't hunt as much as that. But going back to my youth, that was kind of how I came up. And I honestly think not harvesting anything, not killing anything, not, taking anything, whatever you want to call it, really kind of helped my youth, because what happened is I went to college down in Florida.
Okay.
And for 4 years, I was away for November. And it kind of just left this, I didn't realize how much I like hunting. And then talking to my dad, my uncles, when they would get back from camp and tell me some stories, mostly of not killing anything. I realized it kind of grew this flame in me that when I got out of school and went back to Maine. So I went back for 3 years. I got picked up by I'm in law enforcement, and I got picked up by a local department right out of college, and all I wanted to do was hunt. And that was everything I had, thought about for the last 4 years. And it really created this flame in me. And also at the same time, I kind of switched gears on how I did it. So earlier, before school, I was doing a lot of stand hunting and what I saw them doing. And kind of being an active guy, I started tracking deer in those years. And I got a lot of opportunity. I still didn't harvest a buck. So I've still never harvested a Maine whitetail.
No kidding.
And yeah. As funny as that is, because I feel pretty successful out here in the West, but yeah, so that's kind of the path there that got me into it. Also along the way, my wife, I met her in school down in Florida, and she was from Montana. So you might see a little connection there, but
okay.
Yeah.
So that's how you ended up in Montana, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we, at the time I wasn't making a lot of money. This is 2004. I want to say that I got in that department until 2004 to 7. And we were taking trips out to Montana to visit her folks and her brothers. She's got 4 brothers that are just killers. And I couldn't afford a non-resident tag. And back then it was like $600.
Right.
And I think, or maybe even 400. Which is crazy because now they're like 12 or 1,500.
Yeah. You can't sniff it for $400.
Right. But also I didn't have the money. Even getting the plane tickets to come out to visit was expensive. And at some point I just was like, a light bulb went off. I'm like, man, I need to go work in Montana. I can do the same thing out there. We'll be close to my wife's family, and let's go. So yeah, I got picked up with the sheriff's department that I'm currently with. And that career has been an amazing one in itself, just lots of opportunity and taught me a lot about survival and search and rescue and, all the things that I've been able to do and be around amazing people. And so far in my career has really kind of lent hand to my hunting passions. So I came out in 2007 out west, and right away, and I archery hunted in Maine. So I wanted to do that out here. And what I found is that you can hunt in September when the elk are rutting.
Right.
And everybody I talked to, good dudes at my department that were good at killing elk, were like, good luck, buddy. It's so hard to kill an elk. And, good luck. You got to figure it out yourself. And I kind of appreciate that. At the time, I was like, why wouldn't you help me? But man, I've learned so many lessons over the years. In those first few years, I think I went 4 or 5 without killing an elk.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden started killing an elk every year. And I haven't missed one since. I think I'm on, 12 or 13 years straight. So that's, so it's been a good run, but
that's something that we even we kick around a lot here where we're at because we're pretty blessed to be in some pretty good whitetail country. And most of the guys that like do the show with us and stuff, we have pretty good places to hunt, right? So there's opportunity. Now it's by no means guaranteed. I still haven't shot a buck this year. Haven't had a ton of opportunities, but not the right one that I wanted to shoot, right? But we've talked about that with like with our kids growing up. Do you like put them in a spot to be successful like right away? Because like we know our properties and we know there's places where we could probably go sit them and have a really good chance at something pretty nice, right? Or do you let them do it like what sounds like what you're saying? And the way I had to do it growing up was like my dad would just drop me off and, hey, good luck, I'll be back at dark to pick you up, and all the trials and tribulations of trying to figure things out on your own with a little tidbits here and there from somebody, of help, and then all the failures. And like I think there's a lot of value in that, but I think there's also a fine line between, for a lot of people probably that maybe are not as crazy as me and you, if a certain amount of failure, they might just give it up, So like, where's the balance between giving them a successful,
Yeah, I have opinions on that too. And I have a daughter that's now 11.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Montana, you're allowed to hunt as a youth at the age of 10,
right,
as an apprentice. And so you can hunt for 2 years as an apprentice, then you have to go to hunter safety.
Mm-hmm.
Now that could be 16 and 17. You can use those years. You don't have to do it when you're 10.
Okay.
And so with my daughter, we only have one child, and it's a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very princessy and pink and,
mm-hmm.
All that, all growing up. But at the same time, there's this balance of so we ski in the winter,
mm-hmm.
At our local ski area. And we have always said, if our daughter's name's Layla, if she doesn't want to ski, she can make that decision when she's older. But when she's a kid, she's skiing with us because that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't want to do though, in the hunting realm, is be like, this is my passion. I love to hunt. If you walked into my house, you'd see, just the reflection of my passion.
Right.
And that was my passion. I'm not going to force it on my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had a Ruger 10/22 when she was young, and I taught her the rules of firearm safety and just all of the things that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And also in law enforcement, I have guns around the house, so they're going to be locked up and stuff, but she's going to be exposed to it.
Right.
And when she was 10, and in a small little school here in Montana, it's a one room school type thing. It's called Deer Park School. And a bunch of the boys in school were talking about going hunting with their dad for the first time that year. And she came home out of the blue and was like, Dad, I want to go and shoot a deer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, all right. If that's what you want to do, I will help you with that.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of work with 6.5 Creedmoor.
Mm-hmm.
I did put a suppressor on it, so I'll suggest that, because that really helped. Just for a child,
mm-hmm.
There's multiple benefits to it, besides just the report, the sound.
Right.
But also it's like a muzzle brake. It reduces the recoil. But the biggest thing is that sound for the child.
Right. If you're like most hunters out there, at some point, you've dreamed of having a piece of hunting ground to call your own. Maybe you finally decided to make those dreams a reality. If so, you need to talk to our guy, Rodney Hawkins. Rodney is a land specialist with Midwest Farm and Land. If you haven't heard of them, they aren't your average real estate company. While they do deal in traditional residential and commercial real estate, their specialty is recreational and farm ground. With agents like Rodney serving across the state of Illinois, no matter what you're looking for, they can find it. Even if you want to sell what you already have to upgrade, downgrade, reinvest, whatever, they've got you covered. For more information, you can contact Rodney at 618-925-3153, and he'll get you taken care of. On top of what he does for MFL, Rodney also has his own company called RHO Outdoors. They currently carry hard and soft-sided blinds, blind chairs, tree stands, and cameras from Radix Hunting, Tacticam trail cameras, Fission e-bikes, and he's adding new stuff all the time. I've personally used all of these products, and I'm beyond happy with every one of them. The Fission e-bike is a game changer, and you will not find a better one for the price. If you're interested in anything RG Outdoors has to offer, you can send them a message to their Facebook page, RG Outdoors, email them at rgoutdoors@yahoo.com, or again, just call Rodney directly at 618-925-3153.
But anyway, so
I will say on
with
that,
my daughter,
I'm
go
sorry
ahead.
to cut you off.
Sorry, I'm just rambling here.
No,
but
you're good. Unfortunately for us, we're in Illinois, the lovely state of Illinois. We can't even have a suppressor legally in Illinois. But like what you're saying, though, because obviously people are listening to this all over the country. If that's something that I really I wish we had access to for the reason you're talking about, like especially with youth. There'd be so much benefit to that I can see what you're talking about. But yeah, since we live in the great state of Illinois, that's one. We have nice deer down here, but we also have to deal with Chicago politics. But anyway,
sure.
Anyway, I'll let you get back to what you were saying there.
No, and cut me off anytime and interject because I can spit for a long time.
Oh no, that's fine, man. You're good.
But yeah, so with my daughter, I was like, I went through that same thought process. Like, okay, should I bring her on a hard hunt because I know how to do that, and that's not fun for a lot of people,
right.
Even buddies that want to go elk hunting. I'm like, all right, we're marching over that mountain there.
They just think they want to go elk hunting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I decided to take her on private property that my buddy owns, and I know there's a ton of whitetail on there.
Mm-hmm.
And, and we, so with that apprentice hunt, you can shoot a doe or a buck.
Okay.
And so I kind of prepped her for the doe, and that's what I really wanted in my mind for her, to be able to, she had practiced a bunch. And at first, the first day we went to the range, she didn't even want to shoot the gun. She shot it once, didn't like it. I made her shoot it a couple more times, and she was hitting inside the A zone, of where we were looking at. So when she saw the reward on the target, she was happy, but still not confident. So we did that a few more times, and then we did go out to my buddy's property. So this is the question, right? The dilemma, like, do we go to public land where there's an opportunity of monster bucks, but we'll probably go a season without seeing something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do see one of these deer, they're wise, they're schooled up deer.
Right.
So it takes a minute, for a little girl to get set up, or anybody like that. Even my wife, she's got to almost get perfect before she can release the shot.
Right.
So I decided to take her to private property, and she actually saw this doe crossing a fence in front of us. And so we put a little stalk in, and there was a bedded buck right next to it.
No kidding.
So she's like, Dad, I want to shoot the buck. And I'm like, well, all right, here we are. And it's a small 4-point. Well, as we say in the West, 4x4. So
right.
I don't have any idea what it scores, but it's on her wall right now as a European mount. And so that was a really rewarding experience. It did a lot for her in her confidence building. And I was shocked. One shot right in the, perfect shot right behind the shoulder. And that deer, because we waited for it to stand. And so it took, 20 steps and tipped over.
Right.
So it was perfect. It was a good experience. She was beyond excited. And then that's all she talked about all year for this coming season.
Yep.
And she said this year she wanted to shoot a muley buck. And so we tried to set her up on that on some public land this year. And she got, so I'm definitely going down a rabbit hole here.
That's fine, dude. Chase away.
We went out and saw several small little bucks, like I'm talking spikes and some like forks. And she didn't want to shoot them. And they were like calm, no pressure. She could have got proned out, got a perfect shot on them. She's like, no, Dad. She exactly said, no, I'll pass. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. All right.
So the last day of the youth hunt, we went out, and actually my wife and her, like side story, I'll fill you in a little bit, but I tore my ACL this year.
Okay. That's
yeah.
fun.
So I couldn't really hike that well. And so my wife and her went up on this ridge. I was like, man, that looks really good in there. You guys go up there. I'm going to sit here and glass. And sure enough, I glassed up a bunch of bedded does and these coolies. But they ended up seeing a monster muley buck. And it just came in on them. It like kind of I don't know if somebody bumped it to them, but it came running kind of over the mountain towards them. And by the time my daughter was set up, it had like caught wind of them and turned and spooked out.
Right.
But so my daughter was disappointed, but she was still glad about the experience. And I was like, well, hey, listen, you're maturing already because you had opportunity on legal deer, on bucks even, and that was your goal as a muley buck. But had you shot one of those spikes, you would have never had the opportunity to see that buck that you saw, because she was like shaking even when she came back to the truck.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, yeah, and her eyes like, oh, she's like, wow, that's a good point. Like, we wouldn't have gone hunting for a muley if I'd already taken my muley. So I got the opportunity to see just a rare glimpse of a mature big muley buck. And so, yeah, so kind of she got both ends of it. And then I did take her out in the general season and she shot a small whitetail buck.
Okay.
So she shot another whitetail this year. And man, I'm telling you, it's super rewarding. And there's that dilemma. I chose for the first year to kind of give her an easy hunt. And I think it really helped her confidence level for this year.
Right. That makes sense. And I wonder if that's maybe not the way to go. Like just what you did, give them a really good chance the first time. And then after that, like you said, kind of explain, okay, like we did it this way. If you want to go do this and that's your goal, that's what we're going to do. But just know that you may not get an opportunity, you know? And then just like you said, if maybe you're going to pass some, if you don't pass them, you may not have an opportunity at something nicer or to have an encounter like what you might have if you wait. So yeah, there's definitely a balancing act there, and I don't know if there's any like one right way to do it, because sure, I mean, everybody's different, obviously.
Yeah.
But I do think that's probably the direction I'll lean at. Like if my daughter decides she wants to start hunting when she gets to that age, either of them, if they decide they want to get into it, then I'll probably do something similar, like go out where they're going to have a good opportunity the first time at a doe or a buck, whatever. See if it lights the fire, and then because once you get the fire lit, like they're going to withstand those hunts of not seeing anything too, you know.
And I know she gets it that I'm kind of unique in the hunting. I guess you would say the hunting space here locally, because I'll go, you know, a lot of times I'm camping out, so I'll go, you know, weeks and then come back and just beaten and like look, you know, like lost weight and just, you know, so, but if I do a day trip, it's hours before she's awake and hours after it's dark, home and just soaking wet, you know, and so she's like, oh, okay, this isn't easy, you know?
Right.
And, but yeah, that first hunt, if I could have got her on a doe instead of a buck, I would have been a little happier just for my own, like, hey, put you kind of in your place. Because I heard she was at school bragging up to the dudes that she shot bigger bucks than them.
Well, that's okay too, though.
So, it is good. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So I do want to jump back a little bit. You were talking about you went to school and you got your job in law enforcement in Maine, and then you transferred out to Montana. What was that transition like, going from what you were doing in Maine and then going to Montana? Like, was there, what's that look like just from even the law enforcement side of it, moving from one department to the other and then across state? Like, there's some positives there. That first job I had was a small little department that kind of didn't have a lot of opportunity, and I knew it was a starter place. You know, I went to college for 4 years, so I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in criminal justice, actually, the easiest degree to get. And so like, you're kind of going to take what you can get, because you're not going to walk into the like top shelf departments right out of the bat. Nowadays it might be different because guys are hurting for good dudes. Yeah, no doubt.
So I got on with a small department, Lincoln Police Department in northern Maine, and there was a lot of positives. I learned how to fail. I learned, you know, what it like going up to a door by myself with no backup around, and how to talk to people. You know, and so I kind of got through my learning years there, and it's kind of expected that you do like 3 years at the department that hires you and sends you to the academy. It was just kind of an unwritten rule there in Maine. And you could do whatever, you know, if another department's going to hire you within, you know, a month, that's fine. But for me, I just was like, you know, this is my goal. I'm going to stick to it 3 years. And that's what I did. But what it really taught me was what I wanted to do in my career. Because early when I got out of college, I was stoked about like doing traffic stops. And as bad as this sounds to people listening, Driving fast, wearing a gun and a badge, and it wasn't like a power thing at all. Like,
Right.
I was friends with most people in my college or my high school. I wasn't bullied. It was just a culture thing. I was around all these giants in my department and these guys that were just like quality people inside and out at home with their lives. It was the example I wanted to be.
And let's be honest, what normal American kid growing up guy doesn't want to drive fast and have a badge and a gun on their hip? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. Chasing a bank robber.
Exactly.
Even though that didn't happen there. But but the idea is the same. And so but after doing that for a little bit, I was like, okay, I don't know if I do want to do traffic stops my whole career. Like, I think there's some other avenues in law enforcement that I would like to pursue. And so when we looked at going west, we actually had looked at Alaska State Troopers, a big city department in Maine, and then Flathead County Sheriff's Office, where I currently work. And applied to all three and got tentative offers with all three. So we kind of had to make a decision.
Right.
And one of the things about, and I think all of them would have been great, man. I just have a positive outlook on things, and the glass is always, half full. But, coming out and doing those vacations with my wife here in Montana, it was like every time I came here, it wasn't enough. Right. And I never even dipped my toe in those 3 years into the hunting world. And I remember talking to her brothers, and they were like, how was your hunt today? Like, great, man. I saw a big buck track, and I tracked it for a long time. I couldn't even fit a 30-06 shell inside the hooves. Like, it was, it was huge.
Right.
And they were like, man, I saw 8 different bucks, but I didn't shoot any of them. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
what do you mean you saw deer?
I've never been in a world like that,
Right.
So, so the sheriff's office, one of the positives is it's one of the biggest departments in the state. And with that, it's, partly you have population density, you have crime, you have avenues inside the department where you can kind of lateral over to and do different things. So that was kind of my choice. Plus, having kids and her family being here, I was like, man, if that's our future, then let's set ourselves up for success. And I think Alaska, we would have had a blast too. I think Maine, we would have been great there too. But we just kind of made a decision on the whim, like, let's go to Montana. And of course, my wife was like, yep, let's do it. And her family lives here. Right. But honestly, to her credit, she never pushed me one way or the other. She just was supportive, was like, well, what do we want to do? Like, where do we want to be? And so, yeah, when I did get hired out here to Flathead County, none of my time in Maine transferred. I could either leave it in like a little account there and draw it down the road, or just cash it out at the time. And we were super poor. I probably was making $12 an hour. And so I got a few $1,000 that helped us move. Right. And that's what we did. Yep. Yeah. And so, and then looking back at my career so far, it's been amazing. I work with some amazing guys, a lot of hunters. It seems like, our department's full of good knowledge there. And like I was saying with the elk stuff, and, I spent 10 years on our SWAT team after spending some years on patrol. And then I worked narcotics undercover for a long time. And I
bet that's an interesting world.
And detectives. What's that? Sorry about that.
I bet that's an interesting world.
It is.
The narcotics.
That was probably the time I hunted the least.
Yeah, I bet.
It's just on the go all the time. You're traveling a lot and making big cases, and it's all felony stuff. And yeah, it's just different. It's a different, thing. And we did some violent crime too. And it was fun. It was a good experience. Yeah. Yeah. But then I came out of there, and I currently work in detectives, and also I work on our helicopter unit. We have a Bell 429. It's a sweet helicopter, and we have a hoist on the side. So whenever there's an injury in the backcountry where somebody can't, like our life flight or alert can't land and pick the patient up, we'll go in and hoist them off the trouble, whether it's a snowmobiler, a skier, a hunter. We do a lot of all that. Ice climber, any kind of terrain limiting feature that rescue can't get to, we'll go and we'll hoist. And we do 300 air miles from Glacier International Airport. So we go to Wyoming, Idaho, Montana. We travel all over. So our up tempo is pretty high.
Yeah, you got enough to keep you busy, sounds like.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do on board? Like after you guys have got them on board, are you guys all paramedics? Because like we work with AirEvac a lot. So obviously, I mean, you know how that works. We land them, we put the patient inside, and then they're at a higher level of care as they're going to, their final final stop or whatever. What's that work for you guys doing that part of it?
Yeah, when the program got stood up, I want to say it's been 10 years now that the program's been going, and I've been a part of it 3.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got hired on the program, it was basically a new certification was the baseline as EMT.
Uh-huh.
And the reason for that is we're not a medical priority 1. We're not medical. We are rescue priority 1.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is definitely medical. So I do a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
If there's, sucking chest wounds, a lot of femur breaks, a lot of, traction splints and backboarding people and stuff like that. But we also deal with, a heart attack in the backcountry. And so with that, we are not landing at the hospital. We are getting them to a higher level of care. So I'll hoist them off a problem, get them in, and we, depending on our travel time to our waiting helicopter, it could be over the mountain in a meadow, and we'll go and set down and transfer them to alert.
Okay.
Which is what we have locally. And then, or awaiting an ambulance. So we have landed at the hospital, but that's for a very, very few patients that are like, we don't have time to stop and transfer.
Right. I was thinking, I heard you talking about that, something about you guys and landing on hospitals. Like there's something there where you're not supposed to do that, or you can only do that in certain cases, like to transfer them directly.
And I don't know all the licensing, like verbiage on how that all works. And I don't even know what that's called, but I do know this, like if we go for a patient, we find out where we can meet the higher level of care.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But we do have some medics on board in our crew. And so they can push drugs and do stuff like that. But
so you guys will start IVs, or they will?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually we just went through IV training. So that's coming real soon to even our level here.
Even at the basic level?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. With an endorsement.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's kind of like, and I'm telling you what, it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career.
I bet.
And it's really fun. We're flying over some amazing places and, dirt bike crashes and, snowmobile pins and all kinds of crazy things. And and so the way we work is we're on call, but for a certain time period, and we have to maintain 45-minute ETA to the helicopter, and that means wheels off the ground.
Right.
It's usually like, we're ready to go in 20. So luckily my house is not that far from the airport. With lights and sirens, I'm probably 10 and then gear up time and stuff like that. So,
So does that work? Yeah. How does that work with your normal detective gig? Will you be on call at the same time you're working your normal day shift or whatever? Okay.
Yep. So I'm on day shift. So any day calls that come out, I'll spring to the airport. And then there's always something, like right now I'm out of service with my ACL surgery that I just had. So other guys are picking up shifts. So then when I come back into rotation, there'll be we got 3 guys down right now. So, So yeah, it's just a lot of the guys we work with are also studs in the mountains, and they're out there doing stuff and getting hurt once in a while. And we're getting old.
So I'm sure if you guys are like us, like if you're on the fire department, you do not want to be the guy that has to call the fire department to come put your fire out, right? So like if you're out there in the backcountry, you don't want to call your buddies, right?
Dude, 100%. I've had this conversation so many times with people. Like, let me die. Do not call my team.
It's going to be worse.
Obviously, in a scenario, like, we would call.
For sure, yeah.
But, yeah, I've definitely, I've thought about that a lot. And I actually have come across some injuries in the mountains, just out recreating myself, that I've called my boys. But I'm like helping stabilize the patient while they get there. So it kind of is a little different, but
like, by the way, it's not for me. So just save it.
This is not me.
Yeah. Right. That's awesome. Our partners at Flathead Outdoors have some of the best solutions in the industry for your decoy and storage needs. They're focused on innovation that matters, and they build their products to last. They're probably most known for their whitetail, waterfowl, and turkey decoys, and that's for good reason. They've got a lot of quality options at great price points in each category. The Boss Buck is a personal favorite of mine in their whitetail line, and I've been throwing their Stormfront mallards in front of duck blinds for years now. Don't sleep on their storage solutions either, though. Whether it's fishing tackle, firearms, ammo, or archery equipment, they've got you covered. They just stepped up their archery storage game, too, with the new Formula bow case. It might just be the best bow case on the market. We've been using ours for several months now, and I'm continually impressed with the ease of use and security they provide. Make the most of your time outdoors with Flambeau. Realism that gets results. Well, I want to back up just a little bit again to where you got out into Montana and you were talking about getting out started hunting out there. Did you jump into elk hunting right away, or did you start deer hunting first, or what was that like? And what was the learning curve like going from, like you said, kind of what you were doing in Maine, even though you'd started doing a little bit of tracking and stuff, going from that to going out west? What was that like?
That's a good question. And, it's hard to explain what people like to hunt. Like, so if you're a hunter, you ask somebody what they like to hunt, they always have a top shelf answer. Mm-hmm. And I can tell just by talking to you, well, I think big whitetails are kind of your thing.
Yep.
And for me, I think part of the thing is I grew up with whitetails around me, mm-hmm. for one thing. And like I said, I wasn't very good at it, but and same thing with moose and bear. Like, so we have all that here in Montana. Mm-hmm. And so those kind of were like not as shiny to me in just like a, figurative way, as far as like elk, I could never hunt in Maine. So when I came out west, it seemed like that was the pinnacle of what, besides sheep and the special draw tags, mm-hmm. Elk were the things that guys were like, so what they say with elk hunters, kind of diverging here, but 10% of the people that buy all the tags every year, 10% of the people harvest elk. Mm-hmm. And of those 10%, 6% continually kill them every year.
Right.
So 4% of the people luck upon an elk once every other year or every few mm-hmm. years, depending on how hard you hunt, where you go, and all that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to be one of the 6%. Right. I want to be a guy that can kill an elk every single year and do that. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of like a pinnacle goal for me. And like I said, it took several years, lots of close calls and lots of buck fever, mm-hmm. so to speak, in those learning years. And all along the way, I was shooting deer. There seems to be a lot of like whitetail and mule deer out here. Mm-hmm. And so nothing huge. I mean, I think my biggest muley is a 175, which is respectable.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't even mount it, and my whitetail, I can't even tell you, I haven't shot a big whitetail, like decent whitetails, mm-hmm. like definitely respectable, mm-hmm. but I haven't even put tape on them.
Right.
And they're, they're Euros in my house.
Right.
But I don't know if it was because I never could hunt it in the East Coast and I heard everybody talking about it, and it was like also an unattainable goal in the East Coast. Like guys are like, man, it costs so much money. And then to hire an outfitter, because if we're only going for 5 days, how are we going to get the learning curve shortened so that we can, maximize our time and our money and our effort? Mm-hmm. So then when I did move here, my wife's dad kind of taught me a lot about elk hunting, it became like my number one goal of to kill a bull was the first thing I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, it was like, it's insane. It was super fun. One of my SWAT partners was with me. The two of us were hunting, Travis and I. And it was, I will never forget that hunt, but at the same time, you won't on any of your big hunts or probably any of your hunts at all.
Right.
But elk for me was the pinnacle of what I wanted to do. And, part of it too, Canyon, was like the cool thing. My wife grew up with 4 brothers and her dad that hunted, mm-hmm. and they're like true Montana, like amazing family. And every time I would come home with animals, she would just be waiting in the driveway and stoked beyond belief. And is an amazing cook, makes a million different meals with all the, like from from tacos to, spaghetti to amazing burger, like everything in between. Like those are the obvious ones, but we do a lot of like crazy cool meals with the animals, venison and elk. And when I killed that bull, I think I had shot a cow elk before my bull. I'm trying to remember, but you're talking 200 pounds of meat versus the deer.
Yeah. Right.
And so that kind of, that part of it also, was like, man, we don't even have to worry about a deer now. Now I can go out and just be selective.
Exactly.
I can trophy hunt for a buck instead of just shooting a buck and then getting a couple bonus doe tags and shooting those. And then, we'll be okay on meat. Where we don't, our family, we don't ever buy meat at the store. We, I say that's not true. I buy steaks once in a while when I want a beef steak on the Traeger, or like on the grill,
Yeah,
but that's like a specialty, like, oh, somebody's coming over, where they were probably like, oh, I was hoping for elk. But so elk kind of became this like unapproachable goal in my mind, especially with a lot of failed attempts, and especially in bow season. You'll get super close and blow it for whatever reason, whether the wind's shifts or you're not making the right call at the right time. And over those years, I jotted everything down, from the temperature, my location, what calls I was making, and then rereading them as I got experience. I was like, oh, I blew it because of this. I said the wrong thing at the right time, or at the wrong time.
Yep. That's huge.
And so just kind of becoming a student of the game. And so now, like, kind of my tactics on my hunting season is I take September fully off. I don't work in September, and I don't work in November. And my goal is, besides training days, we have like a training day for my helicopter team, that's mandatory in September and also in November. But those are my shower days and my wash the clothes days, and I'm not training. But my goal is to shoot a bull with my bow, and then I can trophy hunt high country muleys with my rifle during November. Yeah. And it never works out that way, especially with my daughter hunting now and friends that come out.
Right.
It's always evolving, but that's the rough draft of like ideal, Yeah. So and it's fun, man. In archery this year, before I tore my ACL, I did it in archery. The 7 days before I tore this, I was probably not at full draw. I was at full draw several different times, but I probably saw 40 different mature bulls, and not within bow range, but saw them cross canyon or bugled them into a close range, but the topography didn't give me a shot, or you know what I mean? And that is, it's really, really addicting.
I would say so. Yeah. We've been out west several times, like on vacations and trips. Like my family would do a big loop. We'd go down to through Texas, Arizona, and then we'd come back up like through Wyoming, Montana. We'd go to Yellowstone up there, and we'd come back down through. But anyway, so I always loved it out there, and I obviously always loved hunting. So I finally got to. It was 2020, actually, great year to go do something.
Yeah,
I went out to Arizona and did a a deer hunt. It was a over the counter, either deer, so I could shoot a Coues deer, whitetail, or a muley. And I went out there for, I think it was 5 days, and hunted. And it was actually in like a really good draw unit for elk, like a limited draw unit for elk, right?
Right. Yep.
And it was cool because the southern part of the unit was like kind of high desert, and then the northern part was like, I don't know, it was probably 9,000 feet. So it wasn't like real high, but it was still, I could get like two different types of hunting in the same unit.
Right.
But up in the higher part, like I got into some elk kind of by accident. I had actually seen a couple of really nice whitetails the night before. I was driving back toward the place I was staying, and it was right by some public access. So I went in there the next morning, and I mean, it was just tore up rubs everywhere from elk. And I got into a herd of cows, and there was two bulls bugling at each other up on a ridge. And it was just like, man, I got to do this. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't even hunting them, and I'm just sitting there watching it and taking it all in. And I jumped up a couple elk spikes at like 60 yards, and it got pretty wild in there that morning. And like I'm sitting there hunting deer and kind of forgot what I was doing a little bit, just taking all that in. I'm like, yeah, because I always knew I wanted to go elk hunting anyway. I thought the mule deer hunt would be kind of a good introduction to a little bit of Western hunting. But that solidified it for me, like being out there, not seeing 40 bulls throughout a season like you're talking about, but just even that one morning of having a group of cows down where I was at, all within 80 yards probably, and then having a couple bulls up bugling at them up on a ridge. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do this, you know,
it's so connecting to like the mountains. It's wild. Mm-hmm. It's really wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say most guys out here, where we're at are back east. Even if they tell you they don't, they want to go hunt elk, right? Like even the big whitetail guys, most people want to go hunt elk, whether they, for whatever reason they ever do or not, most people want to go do it.
Yeah. And, like me for those 3 years, I probably could have made it happen. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know even where to start, even though I had family here.
Right.
And so there's a big barrier with both price tag, the time away from whatever you're doing, whether it's work or family. Mm-hmm. And then how do you figure it out? But people do it, people do it, and it's possible. And it'll take a couple of years too, and not to dissuade anybody from it, because, if you save up for a lifetime hunt of hunting elk and it costs whatever it costs, mm-hmm. and you hear like, it's going to take you a few years. That's kind of where the guide part fits in,
right?
Where they can shorten they're the locals that are there. They know what the elk are doing. They want to get you into elk. They want to get you a bull. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of what I see, and, I've guided a little bit, and also talking to my friends that are guides, a lot of the restrictive parts of it are the hunters. Mm-hmm. Like if they're not in shape and they can't, get up and after them, then mm-hmm. that's what's going to restrict them to different zones that they're not able to get into the elk. But
right,
man, I would encourage anybody that wants to do it to check it out, because it changed my world. It really did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something to be said about the altitude thing too, because like
when you said 9,000, that's pretty high.
I'm in decent shape. I was in decent shape then when I went out there, and I was the first day I was out there, I was at like 8,200, I think, somewhere in that range, 82, 8,400, and
yep.
I was going up in elevation a little bit up a hill. I don't know, it might have been 100 feet, right? In total. And by the time I got to the top of it, I was freaking gassed.
Yeah.
It took me even a couple days just to kind of get in my head what I could and couldn't do, and how hard I could push myself to be able to know, okay, like back home, I could get up that thing in whatever, I could push it pretty hard to get up there, but I'm going to have to pace myself a little bit. And so I can imagine that going out there, I would say that's probably a mistake a lot of people make, is just not given the altitude and the terrain the respect that it deserves.
Yeah, and I think it happens for everyone, even like living here, it still breaks me off. Mm-hmm. And
that's reassuring.
It definitely does. And I work out all year, and I'm out running and jogging and mountain biking and doing stuff in the summer, but mm-hmm. it's a different beast when you have a pack of survival gear on your back. And I don't really know what my pack weighs. It's not super heavy, but I have a med kit, mm-hmm. naturally from knowing what can cause problems. Mm-hmm. It's pretty limited. It's a couple tourniquets, chest seals, just some basic stuff, some combat gauze and things like that. But mm-hmm. Just to get keep the fluids in.
Right.
My cut kit, which has game bags, 3 sharp knives. I have 3 different types of knives that I carry. Mm-hmm. And then whatever food and headlamp, and it adds up. And then also layers, even mm-hmm. in September, I'm carrying like a puffy coat in my pack, and I might be in the morning wearing merino base layers, mm-hmm. But so anyway, yeah, it breaks me in every year. And by the end of September, I'm in pretty decent shape.
Right.
And part of it too is you're not just talking about one elevation change. You're going up and down, chasing these bulls. Uh-huh. When they're bugling, they're moving, you're dogging the herd. Like there's so much to it. So you're gaining and losing elevation all day, and before you know it, you could put yourself in a pickle real quick.
Oh yeah, yeah, no doubt. Was that going from Maine out there? Is that something that like you kind of learned pretty quick, like with dealing with that kind of stuff?
I think that I kind of acclimatized over time because, I actually got hired in July. So I was out hiking, mountain biking, doing stuff like that. And I definitely noticed it, but I can't really remember it as specific as now when my buddies from Maine come out and they're just gassed. And I'm like, all right, guys, I'll go up, you catch up to me, and I'll just sit at the top and glass up our next like point that we're going to move to. And, so I can definitely see it, but also, man, it's just part of the experience.
It is.
It's natural. Can't avoid it. There's no way to train for that.
Right.
In sea level conditions.
Right.
So, do everything that's in your control, and things that are out of it, don't worry about so much. You'll get there if your head's right.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about this season because I know you've you mentioned it a couple times. You did end up getting hurt, but I know you went on an antelope hunt too. I remember.
Yep.
You'd mentioned that one other time. So, what's the season? I guess you're probably getting pretty close to wrapping up most of your. I guess. Well, I don't know. You said you can hunt 9 months out of the year. So what have you guys done since September? What's that look like? And then you can throw the injury in there wherever you want to.
Yeah. So like I said, I take a lot of time off from work. I save up my vacation and comp time. And there's other vacations with the family here and there, which is unfortunate to work in a place where that's allowed and we have the flexibility of doing that. But yeah, so for me, my magic day is right around the 20th. It's when those elk are just cranking. Okay. And it changes around the state too with the elevation and the climate. Like up here in the Northwest, they say that the elk are kicking off around the 10th. But down in the Southwest Montana, they're like the 20th has been my magic day for killing a lot of bulls. And so I try to get there a lot of times early, like around the 10th. So I'm hunting into the heavy rut. And so it's pre-rut. And so I'm gaining knowledge. And also early September, I'll do day hunts around here. And if I kill a bull, it's going to be a decent bull. I'm not going to like waste my whole hunting season on a bull if it's a small guy.
Right.
But then down when it comes to my main time off down where I elk hunt with buddies and stuff like that, man, I'm anchored in. And right around the 20th is when I find, and that could change just like a hunting camp, over the years with pressure, with whatever, wolves, hunting pressure, the full moon, that can change, a few days either side of it. But anyway, I try to be there at least by the 10th, and I'm hunting till like the 25th to the 28th, somewhere in there. And so on this particular year, I don't know the specific day. It might have been like the 21st, but I had been hunting for 7 days and passed several good bulls, drew back on a really nice bull that just didn't give me the opportunity. And then I was heading out of this one zone and tore my ACL. It was super dumb, and I wish I hadn't, but I was 6 miles back on my dirt bike.
Oh, perfect.
Coming out, and this is the first year I've ever done it off my dirt bike. It just was it was just a bummer injury, but I knew it right away. I knew like I couldn't stand on my leg, and so I got on my bike and kind of limped out, and I thought that was the end of my season. And then and I had drawn tags. My wife and I had drawn tags for antelope, which is in October, which is another really fun hunt. You can either put in Montana for a 900 tag, it's called. It's an archery antelope tag.
Okay.
And you can hunt those in September, and they're rutting, and it's really fun. But I found over the years, as I put in for that tag, I just kind of burn that tag in my pocket because I'm always up in the elk woods. So I'm not coming out to the flats hunting antelope. Even in midday when elk are bedded, it's super hot. Like I could be out antelope hunting. I'm so far back that to transition out it would just break me off to get all, 6 to 10 miles out, hunt an antelope, and then get all the way back in for the good evening hunt. Just wasn't practical.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the last few years I've been putting in for rifle tags, and I can do, we do party hunts out here. So
okay,
if we draw it, we all go and hunt. If we don't, nobody goes and hunts. It's pretty nice because it's hard to justify driving 6 hours in Montana for 60 pounds of meat.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to all the other hunting I do. So we drew the antelope tags this year, and I had already torn my ACL, and I was like, man, I don't know what it's going to look like, but let's try. By that time I was getting around pretty decently.
Mm-hmm.
I'd had my MRI, and they said it was a full tear and I needed to have surgery, but
right.
We pushed the surgery out till end of November.
As any good hunter would.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were like, hey man, you need to have the swelling go down. So we're thinking mid-November. I'm like, well, what's your next date?
Right.
So they're like the very end. I'm like, well, that's the day after hunting season closes. So let's see how well I can limp around.
Right.
So it worked out. But yeah, a couple of friends of ours and my wife and I, we went down with our campers and we went out and all of us harvested antelope. So that
Sweet.
was super fun, a rifle hunt. Which, man, it's just really cool. We're glassing them from a long ways away, trying to plan the topography to get into them. And me, super limited. I can't hike very far,
right.
Which is not my typical. And, that's what I was telling the guys at work. I was like, man, some guys are really good at road hunting. I've never done it, and I don't have any spots to road hunt this year.
Right.
So,
right.
like when it comes down to it. So anyway, we killed antelope, and then that was in October, and then general season opens, and my wife and I always do an elk hunt down south with our friends, and she's like, wow, like this year, is that going to happen? Like with your leg? And
mm-hmm.
my good buddy Adam, man, he's a stud. He lives in Dillon, and was a biologist for I think for the feds, not for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And did some cool studies, man, on like sage grouse and all kinds of different stuff. But anyway, Adam's like, you know what, bud, I will take your wife out. We'll go to camp and she can still get her elk hunt in, and you'll be there. You'll feel like you're part of the team and the whole deal.
That's cool.
So we went down. Actually, backing up a little bit, another buddy of mine was like, hey, I've been seeing these elk tracks on this ridge. Let's just go out. I got my wall tent set up. And so we did. We went out for just like a one day hunt, and we glassed up these bulls coming over this ridge, these raghorns, small bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to prone out in 500 yards, dropped a bull in a road, backed my truck up to it, and loaded it up.
Heck yeah.
It's never happened like that before in my life. And,
oh, that's awesome.
a bunch of guys at work are giving me trouble. They're like, dude, you had the most successful year of all your years, and you got a bum leg. And I'm like, well, it's because I'm not being picky.
Right.
So yeah, then we went down to the elk camp, our main hunt. It's really fun. It's, get a lot of food, whether it's wall tents or campers, whatever we do. This year we decided just for my mobility not to set the wall tents out because it's kind of a lot of work to get the firewood cut and all
mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam brought his camper down and met up with him. And very first morning I glassed up 7 different bulls, all cruising into this pocket of timber and bedded down. And so Adam and my wife Rose, they put a stock on them and doubled up on bulls that first morning.
Sweet.
And it was so cool. I watched it all through the spotting scope from my truck.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. So yeah, we ended up with 2 elk so far. My daughter shot a buck this year and a doe, 2 antelope, buck and a doe whitetail,
man.
2 antelope. And then I'm actually packing up as we speak right before you called me. We have a shoulder hunt in Montana. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's basically it's cow only, so no horns. Mm-hmm. And it's a surplus hunt that they do. Surplus is the wrong word. It's a hunt for the ranchers because there's overpopulation,
like a nuisance kind of deal.
Elk. What's that?
They like around here. They'll give farmers what they call nuisance tags. It sounds like it's similar to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's to kind of control the species a little bit.
Right.
And I've never ever done it, but I can't do it. Like I can't go skiing with a family or anything. And so one of my buddies and we packed up the camper and we're like, let's cruise over there and see what we see. So we're headed out in the morning just to see if we can put one more elk in the freezer.
Might as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But this goes to mid-February, this
oh, wow.
here. So
you got some time.
Yeah, absolutely. If I wanted to hunt, my days off, I'm not going to take any more time from work off to go do this. We're sitting good on meat now. It's kind of giving it out to friends and making specialty sticks out of stuff and things like that. So we're healthy on our freezer space, but this is more of a mental health thing for me.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the Ridge Hunter Outdoors podcast. If you've made it to this point, hopefully you're enjoying the show, and if you are, go over to our Facebook page and our Instagram, give us a follow. It's Ridge Hunter Outdoors. We also have a private Facebook group, that's Ridge Hunter Nation. You can go over there and answer a couple questions, and if you're a regular listener of the podcast or you watch any of our shows on YouTube or Carbon TV, you get in that group and just use it as your normal hunting group. Share your success, your failures, pictures, whatever you got, and we'll also give you some extra content in there. I'll ask questions on that, maybe do some surveys occasionally, and we'll also give you guys the opportunity to ask questions for any of our guests that we might have coming on, if we have them lined up in time and that's available. You'll find that at Ridge Hunter Nation. That's on Facebook. Our website is ridgehunteroutdoors.com. That's where you're going to see our scent line, Ridge Hunter Scents, our buck tarsal spray, doe tarsal spray, and our calming spray. All of our apparel is available on the website, and our food plot seed, when it is in stock, is available on the website too. If you want any of that stuff, make sure you use our discount code RHO pod or full draw, all caps on either of those, no space, and you get 10% off your entire order. We also have our entire catalog of podcasts on the website, and our video series are available on there as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other audio platform, give us a like, follow, subscribe, whatever it lets you do, and that'll let you guys know when our episodes come out. They're not always as consistent as we want them to be, but we try to shoot for Monday and Friday. Sometimes it gets on a Tuesday or a Saturday maybe for an episode, and that way you'll know when they come out. It also really helps us without costing you anything. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hopefully you're already subscribed to the channel. If you're not, make sure you do that. If you're not listening to this on YouTube and you're not subscribed, make sure you go over there and do that at Ridge Hunter Outdoors, just like everything else. That's where you'll find our fall pursuit show, spring strutting, all of our off-season vlogs will be on there, and much more. If you guys see a video or listening to a podcast on there and you're enjoying it, just drop us a comment. Hey, good show. Really enjoyed it. Something simple. Give the video a like. That really, really helps us out. And again, it doesn't take much of your time at all. You can also find Fall Pursuit on Carbon TV, and Spring Strutting will be on there this spring as well. So make sure you go over to Carbon TV. They have a lot of great shows to offer, and ours will be on there also. Thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate you tuning in when you do. Now let's get back to the episode. You're talking about, obviously, you're big into the archery hunting of the elk, and something that, to say it gets fought over would probably be putting it lightly. Something that gets fought about a lot in the whitetail space is like archery setups and everything. And I'm a guy that I don't have like a ton of strong opinions on that, because I have shot a lot of deer with a lot of different things, especially like talking broadheads, different arrow types, and different poundages of bows, and I've killed them with almost everything, and I've lost them with almost everything. So like I don't get too in the weeds in the arguments, but there are some people who are like dug in. But I'm just curious what your setup is like. What are you running out there for elk?
Yep, absolutely. So right now for a broadhead, I just switched to an expandable 2 years ago, I want to say, and that's through talking to Dudley, talking with Andy and Dudley, and the tripans are just lethal.
Right.
And as you know, it's shot placement.
Right. Yeah.
So if you put an arrow in a bad spot, it's going to react that way. And so if you had a fixed blade, maybe it would have punched through a rib or something and got your vitals. But for me, I'm shooting a tripan. One of the biggest benefits is there's no drift in your shot. Like when you go from field points to your expandables, they hit the same. And for years, I had problems with. I shot all kinds of stuff over the years, but a lot of the years I was shooting Montex.
Yep.
and I just found like with a practice broadhead, they're all over the place. So then I'd throw a real broadhead on, and now it's gone. You can resharpen it, but and I'd have to adjust my sights, and it wasn't consistent. It didn't feel like I had a ton of confidence at distance on elk.
Right.
And so, I went back and forth, and then sitting down with Andy and John Dudley, they were super, and Dudley obviously has killed a ton of things.
Right. Yeah.
So I started shooting those tripans, and man, I've seen some good results with them. Lots of blood, and but it's all about shot placement and your range too. Like, people ask what's your distance, and it depends. If it's a bull that you're calling in and he's at 80 yards and he's looking for you through the trees and he gives you a broadside opportunity, I probably won't take that shot.
Right.
Because he's coming into a known thing, because I've called. But if it's a scenario where I've heard him and I've dogged the herd and now I've snuck into 80 yards, he has no idea I'm there.
Right.
And I can draw back and release an arrow with zero, shutter step on his part, then I'll probably take an 80-yard shot, So for me, that's my personal opinion. Everybody, people could crucify me or support me on that. But that's just me. And I'm not going to say every year I'm going to take an 80-yard shot. I'd love to have it be 10 yards.
Right. Yeah.
And most of my shots are within 40, to be honest. But that's kind of in my mind how I operate. It's like, if I'm calling and they hang up at 80, I'm not going to take a shot, even if they give me a good broadside shot and I'm full draw.
Right.
Where they don't see me drawing, my sights are set. I'm still probably not going to take that shot because they're expecting to see another bull
exactly
80 yards from them. So any kind of movement could give them like the shutter, and I'm going to miss my target, or I could miss.
Right. Right.
It just increases your likelihood of injuring an animal.
Yep.
So yeah, and I'm shooting a PSE right now. It's actually a Dudley hand-me-down from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what it is. It's one of Dudley's builds.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I have adjustable sights. I have a 20, 30, 40, and a adjustable 50.
Okay. So you got one floater.
Yep, one floater.
Nice. I actually shoot for. Well, I have two different setups now. I have a 70-pound setup with a 100-grain fixed blade. It's a gosh dang it, it's a Magnus Buzz Cut. It's 100 grain. I really like it for whitetails, especially. Most of them are like I'm shooting most of them within 30 yards, right? Like I think the doe I shot early this season, I think she was at 40, but most of the time I'm shooting 40 and in. So I'm not really shooting out to distance with that setup, and I do have a single pin adjustable on that one, so I can, and I'm confident with that setup for whatever reason. That 100 grain on the end of that arrow that I've got, it's a full metal jacket, an Easton full metal jacket. It shoots really well. It shoots darts out of that bow. And then I just bought an SX80 Bowtech. So it's got 80-pound limbs on it, and I'm shooting 5mm Easton Axis arrows out of it I wanted to shoot the same fixed blades just because it's one of the few broadheads that I've shot like throughout my hunting career and not shot a buck with one of them, or like I used to shoot some real similar to these and I never got to shoot a buck with them. So I just want to just to see, Right. So I really bad wanted to have those on the end of it, but also I went up to 80 pounds. So I wanted to shoot 125 grain head because like to me, there's not a lot of benefit to going up to 80 if I'm not going to shoot a little heavier arrow to have the extra kinetic energy. Right. So
sure.
I could not get those 125 grain fixed blades to fly good out of that setup. I adjusted everything and tried to tune it up, but I'd get a flyer every now and then. And then when I got out to 50 and 60 yards, I couldn't, like it just was not consistent. So I actually went back to, I've got some G5 Mega Meats on it, which is a 3-blade expandable. And just like what you're talking about, they fly so much like your field points. I put that practice point on there, shot it was fine, tried one of the actual broadheads, shot it was shooting darts. So like I have a setup with the fixed blade and I've got a setup with the expandables, and it's like usually if you miss, at least on a whitetail, right, because it's a lot smaller than an elk when you're talking about missing forwards. So you can still
sure.
You could miss forwards with a fixed blade at 70 pounds and be okay. If you miss farther back, you're going to wish you had an expandable. Whereas the opposite, if you miss forward with an expandable, you're going to wish you had a fixed blade, yada yada. So shot placement definitely over everything. And I was just curious obviously you've killed a ton of elk. I was curious to see what you shot, because I do think when I get to go out there, I'm going to take the SX80 with that expandable on it, and I don't think I'll feel too bad about it.
No, that's a good setup for sure. You're lethal for sure.
Right. And
having confidence with that dart you're shooting, with the poundage, and you're hunting a big game animal.
Mm-hmm.
Like these things are monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a really funny story with Adam, the guy I was telling you about that helped my wife shoot that bull this year. Last year, we were opening day of archery season. It's like a cluster in itself, but we go down and link up with Adam. It's a Friday night. Saturday morning is opening season, but it's also kind of like a family camping trip with his family.
Mm-hmm.
At his house. It's like a rodeo weekend where they like have some awesome events.
Okay.
And so my wife and daughter are there. They're more there for the fun. But I was like, Adam, dude, it's opening season. Let's get out. He's like, man, it's been 90 degrees. I don't think the elk are rutting yet. And it's like early September.
Right.
And I'm like, I know. Also, Adam didn't have a lot of archery time that year, last year, like to go hunting. So I'm like, hey man, I don't know where you want to go, but let's just go out for the morning. So we get down there, we link up with him at like 5 p.m. We end up like having a couple drinks and just hanging out. And all of a sudden it's like midnight and we look at each other. We're like, are we going tomorrow? He's like, oh yeah, we are. So I was like, okay, I'll see you in your driveway. Cause we were camping in his driveway. I was like, I'll see you in your driveway, have the coffee on because I'm not starting the coffee on the camper.
And I'm going to need it.
And we'll see. Yeah, exactly. So I meet him in the morning and I get out there first and Adam's not there. And I'm like, okay, I'm going back to bed. And then I hear the door creak open and he comes out with 2 cups of coffee and we launch. He's like, I got a good spot that holds elk. It's real close to the house. It's like just down the road. So let's go for a quick hike, see what we see. And we can come back, take a nap. And the ladies were going to the rodeo thing. Mm-hmm. So we're like, let's just go for the morning. So we cruise out there. We hike in like, I don't know, a couple miles. And we're at this kind of like pinnacle spot on this ridge where like we either drop all the way in and we're hunting for a couple hours, or we can go back and like get to bed by like 9 in the morning and take our quick nap. Mm-hmm. And Adam's like, across canyon, I usually see elk, crossing that open patch that you see like in the morning. They're dropping down in the timber. Mm-hmm. And with my naked eye, I see a bull like 800 yards across canyon. I'm like, Adam, there's a bull on that canyon. I put my glass on it. Sure enough. So I'm like, hey, you put your glass on it. I'm going to rip a bugle, see what he does. A bugle, he doesn't give a care in the world. He lifts his head, but goes back to feeding.
Right.
And it's just too early. They're just not active. Mm-hmm. And it feeds kind of down to our left, but deeper into that canyon on the cross canyon. And Adam's like, well, what do you want to do? You want to head back? And I'm like, well, dude, we know where there's a bull. Well, let's just go put a stock on it. Like, let's get to it. Mm-hmm. So shortening the story a little bit, we cruise all the way in there. We get to where we kind of think we're ahead of the bull. And usually if they're on a line, they're going to stay on that line unless bumped off it right. On a trajectory.
Okay.
So we get set up ahead of it. And we get set up and I start making some cow calls. And all of a sudden, the woods erupt. The forest erupts with bugling, cow calls. This one bull comes running in below us. And Adam's like 80 yards in front of me. I can see him because I'm like, I'll set you up for success. The wind's in our face. I'll set you up because you don't have much time. I've got the whole month off to hunt. So
right.
like, get in front of me. This bull comes in, doesn't give him a shot. And now he's like, if you can picture 100 yards in front of me, he's moved forward a little. So we're quite a ways apart from each other. Mm-hmm. And over my left shoulder, I hear some crashing. And I look behind me and there's this bull coming down the mountain towards us. Kind of in between us, but like if you can picture a triangle, it's centered between us but off angle, so there's no like crossfire issues.
Right.
But I'm not even thinking Adam. I'm like, well, that thing's 30 yards from me. I'm going to drop it. It's day one. So I knock an arrow, draw back. He goes behind a tree. I draw. He steps out from behind the tree. Not even coming into my calls anymore. It's been like 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And I release this perfect arrow. It goes right behind his shoulder. I watch him spin away from me and run. And I was like, man, I just killed a bull opening day, first couple hours. That's awesome. And I'm like, surely Adam heard me shoot, and heard that elk run off.
Right.
Whatever. So I wait like 5 minutes. I don't see Adam. So I cruise up to where I shot, and there's a bloody arrow there, but it's not my arrow. And I don't know what Adam's shooting, but I'm looking at this. I pick it up, and it's bloody, like fully expanded broadhead.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so confused. It's like facing me. So I'm so confused. And I look up and see Adam coming at me, and he's laughing. And he's like, did you shoot? I start laughing. I'm like, did you shoot? He's like, yeah. We shot at the exact same time, and we double lunged it from opposite sides. And we drilled that bull from both sides. Well, that bull with 4 holes, ran probably 800 yards down canyon towards our truck.
Well,
actually.
At least it was that.
And, yeah. And we followed this, like, blood trail that Helen Keller could have followed all the way down to this bull, tipped over. And Adam put his tag on it due to the time restrictions that we had for him.
Right.
And man,
that's crazy.
It was one super impressive and crazy story, but two, it's like these things are so tough, man.
No kidding.
They're so tough. So
that's crazy. I bet it had a good blood trail of 4 holes in it.
Yeah, it did, because both of our angles going in were right behind the shoulder, and then they come out a little further back, both sides. So, taking it apart, it was funny. Oh, here's one of your holes. But,
right. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It was a crazy story. But.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing how tough all those animals are. Like just going back to what I know, the deer, they're the same way. Like you'll shoot one, you could single lung one, and if you hit it high and it doesn't bleed a lot, like that thing.
Yeah.
It could live into the winter and maybe eventually die from the winter or whatever. But, I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times where single lung shots or, like, even partial liver hits or something, and, like, they just don't die. They go and go and go, and you never find them. Maybe you get a picture of them on trail camera 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And it looks like nothing happened. It's just unbelievable. I can't imagine with elk how much, I mean, it's got to be unreal. It was actually just the size of them and everything, obviously. But I was talking to Josh Fields on here a few weeks ago with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls.
Yeah, Josh is an absolute legend, man.
Oh, dude.
He's one of my best buddies.
Really?
Such a stud.
Oh, he's a cool dude.
We worked in an undercover unit together.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was asking him and that's what made me think of it, just the similarities between how tough they are. But, like, we'll have deer sneak up on us, and it's like you can't believe a 250-pound animal in the dry leaves in the fall could sneak up behind you and be 10 yards away without you knowing it, right? And
Totally.
I asked him if it was the same way with elk, and he said, oh, yeah. He said, you'll be standing there, and he said, sometimes you'll turn, and there's one looking at you at 30 yards. And that just, like...
Absolutely.
It's so crazy how well they get around for as big as they are.
Yeah. Yeah, they are big and smart, not, and that's their terrain, and they know how to maneuver in it, especially when you talk calling animals. Like in rifle, if you're like spot and stalking herds, you hear them a lot more. But when they're coming in to breed a cow because they've heard a move that you've made, they are on alert, and they can be stealthy, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's something else that, like when I was out there on that mule deer hunt, I saw one from the road, it was a solid bull, probably 340 inches. And I stopped and got some video of him on my phone. And of course he knew the deal. I stopped on the road.
Right.
He was leaving, but the way he went up over the mountain and was gone in like seconds was just unbelievable.
Yeah. And then watching them run through timber too. The way they tip their heads. I mean, they have these huge racks, like a 340 bull. You know what I'm talking about. They're just monsters. And the way that they can just lean their heads back and run through thick timber, and you're like, how in the world
exactly
is this thing running? And you're not hearing a single branch, break.
Yeah. Yeah, watching that thing run over that mountain, I was like, it did take me 2 days to get over that thing, and that dude's just gone.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's pretty crazy. But hey, man, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. There's so much other stuff I could pick your brain about, hunting out there and elk hunting, and just even with your career, I think that stuff's really interesting as well. Like we're kind of adjacent to that, so
absolutely.
Get to see a little bit of it. But if you want to, we'll do it again sometime, man. But like I said, I don't want to keep you too much longer tonight. I do appreciate you coming on. Sorry it took so long to get the schedules.
Yeah, no, we've been going back and forth. Hunting season is tough.
It is.
Even with a bum leg.
A buddy of mine said, and I kind of live by this too. He said, once November rolls around, I'm kind of like Sasquatch. Like, you might hear about me, someone might get a picture of me, but like it's going to be questionable whether I'm actually there or not.
I love it. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So, no, man, thanks for coming on. And like I said, if you want to do it again, we're not scared to return guests. So we'll have you back on sometime and talk some more hunting, talk some more shop stuff. So
sounds good, Kenyon. And let me know if you make your way out this way, and we'll show you where it's at.
Heck yeah, dude. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. You take care.
Yep.